$1.27. The pound buys $1.31 and €1.18. And LBC weather, mostly cloudy with mist and fog over parts of England and Wales tonight. Rain in Scotland moving further south to leave some clearer skies, a low of 4 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Thomas Watts.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation, the Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. We will, in the course of the next hour, go firstly to Glasgow, where there is a suspected outbreak of the coronavirus. We'll also go to Heathrow Airport and have a look at what our security has been to stop this virus getting in. I think there are some big questions to be asked. They will do that a bit later on. But tonight, what I want to talk about with you is a subject that affects a huge number of people every year. A subject that leaves millions of people in fear, and I think a growing number of people in fear. A subject that the government realise matters and made quite a priority of during the general election campaign. But it's a subject that I do feel we're not having a proper national debate about, and it is crime. It is rising crime. And the figures released today from the Office of National Statistics are not very pretty. The good news is the total number of homicides last year fell by 6%. But if you look at the rest of it, I mean, it really is not pretty. Robberies in 1 year up 12%. Violent crimes against the person up by 12%. Knife crime up again, and it's 46% up, knife crime, in the space of the last 5 years. So whichever way you look at this, crime is on the up. But what is even more shocking, I think, than the rise of serious crime is the fact that only 1 in 14 crimes leads to anyone getting charged. So if you think about it, you know, if you're making money robbing people in the street, your chance of getting caught is really very, very low. Your chance of being charged is even lower. Your chances of serving a significant sentence are very, very small indeed. Where are the deterrents to this? What's gone wrong on our streets that is allowing this to happen? And I want to ask you, do you think there's a quick fix to bringing crime down? What's the one thing you as LBC listeners can suggest that we should do or could do to make our streets safer and bring crime rates down? Let me know on 0345 6060 973. Equally, you can text your ideas into 84850. You can tweet them in using the hashtag Farage and LBC, at LBC, and of course watching on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. You too can tell us. Give us one big idea. Now, there's only one thing I can really think of, and this goes back to my friend Rudy Giuliani, who, of course, was famously the mayor of New York. He happened to be the mayor of New York, of course, during those horrendous 9/11 attacks all those years ago. And Rudy pursued a policing policy known as the broken windows policy. And what it said was that if on a street you've got smaller issues like graffiti on walls, like litter on streets, like broken windows, that the atmosphere of that street was one in which petty crime started to thrive. And that actually a lot of this crime was bottom up. It was lots of people committing petty crimes in those environments who then went on to commit more serious crimes. So he brought in something called a zero tolerance policy. Now, in America, sentencing in America is frankly pretty savage. But they did drastically reduce crime on the streets of New York, and it became a safer city than London. And I can remember going to New York in the mid-'80s and really thinking, gosh, I think we better, it's after dark, it's night time, we've had a drink, I think we better get a taxi wherever we're going, to the mid-'90s when I felt quite confident at any time of the day or night, frankly, strolling down Fifth Avenue. So it was an amazing achievement. It did coincide with drugs prices falling, and I do think we can't debate crime without thinking about drugs, the county lines gangs, and all the rest of it. So tell me, what do we need to do? And am I perhaps exaggerating how important this issue is? Well, Boris Johnson took it very seriously in the general election, and he has promised that they're going to reduce crime by 20%. Violent crime, he wants to reduce by 20%. And he's doing that by announcing a further $1 billion for police forces. He's doing it by saying that there will be recruited in the next few years up to 20,000 police officers. And we're told the first 6,000 will be recruited fairly shortly. Is that enough? As I say, I know that Brexit has dominated our national debate hugely over the course of the last few years, and not surprisingly. And it isn't going to go away on the 1st of February completely, because there are a lot of issues to deal with. But I do think that other kinds of national debate will begin to take over, perhaps by the end of this year. And I think crime, how we deal with crime, is one of them. And before I move to our first caller, can I just make this one point? You know, I gave you the stat. Only 1 in 14 crimes reported leads to anyone getting charged. But that is of reported crimes. My feeling is crime is now so commonplace, we don't even bother to report it. I was the victim of one crime last year. I didn't bother to report it. You know, kids get their iPhones nicked on the way home from school. They don't bother to report it. And I wonder just how much unreported crime has gone up. And I'd love to see some polling and surveys on that. Keith is a first-time caller from Aberporth in South Wales. Keith, good evening to you.
Oh, good evening to you, Nigel. You're a star.
Well, that's very sweet of you.
I've always wanted to speak to you. I've never been able to until now. So, you know, congratulations for all you've done, and more power to your elbow.
Well, thank you. Now, Keith, tell me, you know, when you go out at night on the streets of Aberporth, do you feel safe?
Oh, yeah. I don't often go out.
Right.
Except to the pub, but the pub's closed for renovation.
Bad luck.
No, it's a low crime rate round here.
Okay.
I was born and brought up in London, and during the 60s. And I think one of the reasons for this, although I had a great time in the 60s, is the wishy-washy attitude to crime and punishment in this country since the 60s. So many of these judges and chief policemen and people in authority have been completely brainwashed by left-wing education in schools and universities that they've gone soft on. They went soft on crime years ago, and I think it would possibly make a big difference to restoring beat patrols. I think they tried that recently in somewhere and.
So you're saying basically get the police back on the streets?
Get them back on the streets.
Well, but what about, Keith? But what about, and I understand what you're saying. Now, you said you came from London. That, of course, is the Metropolitan Police area.
Yeah.
Now, there are up to 1,000 Metropolitan police officers and staff who are working to deal with hate crime.
Oh.
That means people online saying abusive and nasty and offensive things to each other. I mean, surely that must be a big priority, Keith, too.
Well, I think it's a lot worse getting stabbed. But, I mean, it's also the drugs thing that's also been a product of the 60s, I'm afraid to say, where, they've just gone soft on drugs. Everybody and anybody should do with drugs, that include users as well as dealers, should be arrested,
Keith,
in my view.
Keith, do you have any idea just how many people in this country take illegal drugs now?
Oh, a fairly good idea.
It's off the charts.
Okay, well, a considerable number.
It's off the charts. I mean, if you were to arrest everyone that smoked cannabis, we wouldn't have a big enough police force to do it.
No.
But and that is a cultural problem. But Keith, I get your point. We've gone soft. I agree with you. Proper policing on the streets. Absolute pleasure to talk to you. I hope that pub reopens very soon for you. Poor old Keith, stuck indoors. The boozer's up for renovation. Let's go to Stuart, who's a new caller to the show from Rayleigh in Essex. Stuart, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. Welcome. So we've looked at the ONS figures today. I know it's just one set of statistics, but there is an overall trend here, is there not, of rising crime?
There is an overall trend of rising crime. As an ex-police officer of 10 years, I left about 7 years ago. The crime figures are sometimes hard to take serious when you're routinely... it's run like a business, the police. They need detections for their crime figures. He was routinely asked, we're 4 detections short. Can you go out to the known cannabis spots and give out some cannabis warnings to prime the to crime, the offence to up their detection figures. So obviously crime's going up with the lack of police on the streets, which was noticeably happening due to the budget cuts back in 2012.
Stuart, as somebody who was a serving police officer, is it fair of me to say that Theresa May should be carrying some of the burden for this? It was, after all, on her watch that police got cut so much, wasn't it?
Massively. I mean, Theresa May was the reason I left in 2012 due to pay freezes, pay cuts, pension cuts. A lot of good officers, experienced officers, have left the police. Obviously, they're now trying to resurrect that. But there was days when I was acting sergeant and, covering Southend area, we'd have 6 officers available covering a huge area. I think if the public knew the amount of police that were actually available,
they'd be horrified.
10 jobs. Exactly right. But the figures are distorted.
Stuart, let me ask you a question. I mentioned a few minutes ago Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, is a friend. And, he took over a city that was notorious for crime, homicides and all the rest of it.
Yep.
And he did, in his period of mayor, radically transform New York with zero tolerance policing and sentencing. It was very, very, very tough policing. The sentences given out were very, very harsh. Is it possible for us in this country to adopt that kind of policing, and would it work?
Well, massively. I mean, they need that certainly in London, but I think the people at the top are too PC, too worried about their reputation and next promotion to enforce harsh measures that they may initially be criticised for. But that's certainly what's needed, certainly in London at the moment.
You sound, as an ex-police officer, a bit disappointed in the police.
Yeah, very. I mean, I joined it as a career to do my 30 years and become very disillusioned with it to the point that I left and went into an alternative job.
How do your former colleagues, perhaps still serving, how do they feel about things?
Well, obviously, I've got plenty of friends in. I certainly know morale's well down. Not many of them are too happy, and I certainly know plenty of experienced officers that should never have been at the point to leave, leaving good. With the police experience is what's needed to become good at the job, and they've certainly lost a lot of people and brought in inexperienced people that would take time to get to the level of the people they had, but it's been allowed to happen.
Stuart, not a very pretty picture. Thank you for your call and your experience. This is the Nigel Farage Show. It is 6:15 and time for the news headlines with Thomas Watts.
18 people are now known to have died from the coronavirus outbreak in China, where movement restrictions are in place in several cities. A Royal Marine recruit is in a critical condition after getting into difficulties during a training exercise in Cornwall. A 56-year-old man will be sentenced tomorrow after he was found guilty of attacking a police officer with a machete. A cloudy night across England and Wales with clearer skies in Scotland, a low of 4 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. On the M25 anti-clockwise, it's very slow to the Dartford Tunnel. That's because a lorry's broken down after junction 2 for the A2, so 2 lanes are closed. On the M25 anti-clockwise, there are also queues for around an hour, going from junction 9 for Leatherhead to junction 6 for Godstone after an accident earlier on and because of roadworks. It's slow on the M1 northbound because of an accident after junction 11 for Luton. There are delays in Harrow. The A404 Watford Road stays closed in both directions because of water mains burst near Harrow Hill Golf Course. On the Underground, there's no service on the District Line between Earls Court and Edgware Road because of a signal failure. And London Overground, they still have no service between Barking and Gospel Oak. That's after a freight train derailed this morning.
LBC.
PlusNet care about their customers. That's why, if you take out a new fixed-price broadband contract with them, they won't raise prices during it, making sure that the price you pay is the price you stay with. They're so proud of it, they got me to shout it from up here. Literally from the rooftops!
Shut up! It's 3 in the morning!
Sorry. PlusNet will do you proud. For customers taking a new broadband contract, terms apply.
This is LBC.
LBC, together with Transport for London, are looking into the issue of air pollution in the capital, one of the most significant challenges facing inner and outer London. This week, Nick Ferrari spoke to Amar from the Doctors Laboratory about how businesses can do their bit to improve air quality.
We needed to look at how we could reduce the amounts of traffic inflow and outflow from our building.
Watch the full interview and find out how you can help clean up London's air at lbc.co.uk.
How can it be fair that millions of people in the world are denied access to clean water?
At WaterAid, we need your help to create an equal world. Whether you're from Morden or Madagascar, everyone, everywhere should have access to clean water. Because clean water changes lives. You can help WaterAid change the picture. To find out how, search WaterAid Radio now.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
New year calling for a new kitchen? Get to B&Q for up to 5 years interest-free credit with no deposit on our new kitchen range. Hurry, offer ends 2nd of February. You can do it when you B&Q it. Minimum spend £8,500 for 5 years interest-free credit. Credit subject to status. B&Q PLC is a credit broker and works exclusively with Hitachi Capital UK PLC, both authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Obsession, an idea or thought that continually preoccupies a person's mind. At Darwood & Tanner, one of the UK's most innovative dental implant practices, we are obsessed about dental health and dental implants transforming our patients' lives. Here's Andrew Darwood.
One of the great joys of our practice is that we're seeing patients we treated 25 years ago with dental implants, and they're still doing well, still smiling.
Visit darwoodandtanner.co.uk. Obsessive dental care.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Crime is rising and much crime isn't even being reported. What are we going to do to try and reduce it? The government are going to recruit more police officers, but I also think there needs to be a change of approach. I suggest that what happened in New York 20 years ago is perhaps a lesson to us. Zero tolerance. Yep, it's harsh, but are we just going to stand aside and watch crime go through the roof? Now, before I get back to that, a moment in the House of Commons today, and let's listen to Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, Nigel Evans.
I have to notify the House, in accordance with the Royal Assent Act 1967, that Her Majesty has signified her royal assent to the following Act. European Union Withdrawal Agreement, Act 2020. Order.
So, the Queen has given royal assent. All the legislative stages have been passed. That means legally we are leaving on the 31st of January. That's in just 8 days' time at 11 p.m. But there is one potential little obstacle in the way, and it's this. The European Parliament have to veto this, or they can vote for this, or they can veto the entire agreement. That vote will take place at approximately 5 p.m. next Wednesday in the European Parliament in Brussels, but there's very little chance that they're going to do that. But that's just the one last stage that we have to go through, but we're almost there. Whether it's a perfect Brexit or not, it is Brexit, and that in itself is a big moment. Back to crime. Mark on Facebook says there should be 10 years for carrying a knife and life for using one. Mark, I'm not disagreeing with you in terms of sentencing, but we're going to have to resolve one thing in our own minds. We'll need to build more prisons. Robert says zero tolerance sentencing is what the public wants to see. I sense, Robert, increasingly that it is. Daniel says crime has gone up because of an increase in bad people, but a decrease in the numbers of police to stop it. An increase in bad people. Are we more predisposed to heading in a direction of crime than we were 10, 20, 30 years ago? Maybe we are. Leroy is calling from Ruislip. Good evening, Leroy.
How you doing, Nigel? You okay?
I'm doing well. So,
Excellent.
You live in Greater London. We're seeing, the crime figures. And certainly out in your part of London, when we look at burglary in particular, burglary is up, street robbery is up. What's going on, Leroy?
Everything's on the up, Nigel. I work with young kids at the moment, and I see their sort of attitudes towards things and the way that they're getting sort of socially groomed into just, thinking that violence and knife crime and everything else, that's just the way that they're going to have to take it. It's, I said it the other day, it's the poverty of low aspiration, which is, what a lot of these kids are suffering from at the moment. I'm not against stop and search. I think I'm against the way that it's potentially done. if you're going to be aggressively being, approaching a group of young kids and, having a real go and making them feel bad about themselves. I remember when I used to go to bars and clubs and stuff like that, excuse me, the happiest times I ever had was when the bouncers on the door would say, "Hi guys, how you doing? Yeah, have a good night in there. There's plenty of young ladies in there tonight. Have a laugh." And it was great. You go in there with a smile on your face. The other bouncers, you come across the door and they be, big stern faces. It's the same principle there, Nigel.
Leroy, I'm interested that you say that because, I'm old enough to remember the Brixton riots, all right? Of 1981. Yeah. And one of the causes of increased tension between the black community, Rastafarian community in particular in those days, and the police was something called the Sus Laws. And
remember that, yeah.
And the Sus Laws kind of were rather like a form of stop and search.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And the black community said they were being unfairly targeted, and the police said, no, there is a much stronger prevalence of drugs amongst the Rastafarian community. We have got to deal with it. How do we give the police the tools to do this without outraging certain sections of our community in London?
Well, I think if you've got, look, I'm, the whole cannabis thing, as you just said, if you stopped everyone who's smoking cannabis in the country, the streets would be empty. If the police are searching and, because people are stabbing each other and they happen to, pull a little joint out of a guy's pocket, they maybe just put it back in or drop it on the floor and ignore it and see that they haven't got any knives on them and say, on your way. Now, that's one way of going about it, perhaps, because if you're stopping and searching some little guy who's got a little bit of something on him, I'm talking about cannabis, anything else, Nickham, I'd say, right? But if he's got a little bit of cannabis on him or something like that, and, he saved his money up to get it or whatever, and they can take that, they're going to run. They're going to run or something because they don't want that taken off them or whatever. So if that could happen. But I think with the whole stop and search thing again, it's got to be across the board, but I think it's a little bit too far down the branch now, to be honest with you. I think we've got to start younger, and you've got to educate the younger kids. Like I say, I work, I've got a company, Sweet Science. We go into schools teaching kids boxing and morality and all the
good. Well done, you.
Yeah, we do some really good work when we turn kids' lives around. It's fantastic. And one of the things that, we say, Craig once said it was, it's better to build strong children than to repair broken men. And, I love that.
I like that. I like that. That's a great phrase. It really is a great phrase. Leroy, your experience in this is invaluable. And I want to say this to you. This is a theme that we're going to be returning to again and again and again. And I think your insight into particularly how young people, what their attitudes towards carrying knives, etc., is so important to the future. I want you to promise me that when we return to these issues, you will ring us again with your experience.
100%. I'm always listening.
Good.
No problem.
Good man. Thank you very much. Well, that was really interesting, wasn't it? He's making a point there that actually, we've got to deal with this. If they're leaving schools predisposed to carrying knives, predisposed to thinking they can walk around with drugs in their pockets and nothing's going to happen, you've got a problem for the future. Let's go to Adrian, who's a new caller to the show from Manchester. Adrian, good evening.
Yes, hello. Good evening, Nigel. Pleasure to talk to you. Well, I'd just like to say that, I'm a similar age to yourself, and
bad luck.
And I just cannot believe that it's actually come to this. And I actually think what we need, I'm not so sure that there's political will to do it, but I actually think we need a sledgehammer to sort this out, because the problem that you've got is that the focus is very much on the social piece. So it's very much on, these kids are from deprived backgrounds, there's no future, and to me, we're going to have another decade of people being stabbed, on the streets of London, and you can see this now. This is permeating out across the country.
So what's the sledgehammer, Adrian?
So the sledgehammer for me is this: it involves the police and it involves the prison service. Okay, forget the social piece. We can work on that over the next 10 years. What we have to do first and foremost is we have to look at, forget building prisons. Okay, you've got to empty the prisons of all the people that are in prison at the moment for non-violent crime. Okay, they don't get. Bear with me. They don't get a free get out of jail pass, Nigel. They have to go to work in the community. All right. But what I'm saying is, free up the capacity in the prisons. Okay.
Are you saying to me, Adrian, that you think it's wrong that there are people in prison for not paying the BBC licence fee?
Well, that's absolutely. That's another one. But if you look at it, you look at people in prison for fraud. You look at people in prisons for motoring offences. It just seems to me. I mean, I heard on LBC, and this is going back probably a couple of months, and I forget whose show it was, but they were saying that the police, because I work in London. Okay, I'm from the northwest, but I'm in London 2 or 3 days a week. I'm in the security industry,
okay,
and I know firsthand what's going on. And I heard on LBC that the police have strengthened powers to stop known perpetrators of people carrying. I mean, can you believe those words? I mean, so it goes on to action number 2. And I like what Rudy Giuliani did, it should be zero tolerance. And in other words, if you get caught, pal, and you've got a knife on you, or acid, or whatever your weapon of choice is, you are going down, and you are going down for a very long time. And believe you me, forget the social piece, Nigel. If we adopted a strategy like that, We've got the deterrent, and this is going back to when me and you were growing up as lads. We were scared of the police. There was a healthy fear of the police back in the 70s and 80s.
I mean, equally, Adrian, we were scared of some of our school teachers, weren't we?
Absolutely.
Terrified in some cases.
They're like social workers.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we've got to get some discipline back into our culture, Nigel. And, as I say at the outset of the conversation, my fear is that we're positioned too far to the left, the PC brigade, to actually to get a strategy like this moving. That's my fear, but maybe not with Boris. Who knows? With you nipping at his heels, maybe. Who knows?
Adrian, thank you for your thoughts and calls. And look, a lot of you now saying tonight many of the same things I'm saying. Is that because we're all a bit too old? We don't understand the youth of this country. Are things like stop and search, are things like zero tolerance, are they likely to alienate large sections of society? Or could it actually work and bring down crime? I'm keen to hear from some younger people on this too. 0345 6060 973. Maggie says there are no strong deterrents. Sentencing that's handed out is a joke. Geraint says to me, a quick way to reduce crime, make the parents jointly responsible for their children's crimes until they're 18. That's an interesting one. We're going to come back to this in a minute, but for now, it is 6:30 and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
5 people in Scotland are undergoing precautionary tests for coronavirus after arriving in the UK from China. Authorities are imposing new restrictions across the Chinese province at the centre of the outbreak. In the last couple of minutes, the World Health Organization's Emergency Committee has said it's too early to declare the illness an international public health emergency. A 56-year-old man has been found guilty of attacking a police officer with a machete after his van was pulled over. PC Stuart Oughton suffered head injuries, broken fingers and a wound to the arm in East London last August. The Royal Navy is investigating after a Marine recruit had to be taken to hospital by helicopter during a training exercise in Cornwall. The man, who's believed to be in a critical condition, had been taking part in an amphibious assault on Tuesday evening. LBC weather, mostly cloudy with mist and fog over parts of England and Wales tonight. Some rain in Scotland moving further south. A low of 4 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7.
The man who would be London Mayor, former Conservative candidate for leadership. Rory Stewart here's taking your calls.
The test of a great leader in policing is to say a very simple thing, which is, my job is to reduce crime and to set about reducing crime. So if I became mayor, I would say very straightforwardly, as I did in prisons, where I said I would resign unless I reduced violent crime in prisons, I would say, I will reduce violent street crime, and we can do it. You have to be accountable.
But what price will you pay if you fail? You're saying you would resign as mayor?
I would be very tempted to resign as mayor, and the same was true in prisons. If I hadn't reduced violence by 17% in 7 months in prisons, I would have resigned, and that's the kind of leadership you need.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Xero. Get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
My name's Luke. I live in Dunstable with my wife and 4 daughters. We've got a Ring doorbell too out the front. Every time there's someone who comes up to the door, it notifies my phone, and then I can actually see if there's anyone dodgy at the door. A while ago, we had an incident at the house. My wife and I was in bed about 1:30 in the morning. We got a notification on my Ring app on my phone. So I looked on the actual video itself, and it showed me that he was trying to get underneath the mat to see if there was a key there so we can actually get into the house. The video clip allowed the police to see exactly who was in front of the camera and where that person was touching the door. And that allowed the crime scene technician to dust for prints. Thanks to the video clip and his fingerprints, that was enough to convict him. The most important thing for me is when I'm not here during the night, I need to know that the family's safe, and Ring Doorbell does that.
Join Luke and the millions of people protecting their homes with Ring. Learn more at ring.com.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
If you've been holding out for that perfect car, do yourself a giant favour and get down to the Car Giant Winter Sale. With massive price reductions on thousands of ULEZ compliant vehicles. Enjoy giant savings in our biggest sale of the year. The Car Giant Winter Sale, now on. Search Car Giant.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
People tell me I've got a baby face. My secret? Stay active. Do what you love. Personally, I love music and drinking tea. I do love my English tea. It kept me warm when I was sleeping rough.
City Hall has doubled its outreach workers. You can help people like John too. Search StreetLink London to connect a rough sleeper to the Mayor's new rapid response team. Whatever the weather, homeless people deserve better.
A credit limit of up to £1,500. What do you have to do to get it? Simple. Get online and check if you're eligible for an Ocean credit card in minutes without affecting your credit score. For your Ocean credit card, visit ocean.co.uk now and get all that from Ocean. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One, the exclusive lender. Representative 39.9% APR variable. Borrow and spend responsibly.
You're in charge of hiring, and Indeed has solutions, like sponsored jobs, which increase the visibility of your post in search results to make sure the right candidates find you faster. We also give you the pigeon of perception, who only coos when you find the perfect CV, or when he's hungry. OK, no pigeon then, but there are sponsored jobs.
See why more than 250,000 companies in the UK use Indeed for hiring. Visit Indeed.com/redeem today and get a free sponsored job upgrade on your first posting. Terms, conditions and exclusions apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
We're talking crime, but we're going to break because the coronavirus has reached the United Kingdom. We're talking about Scotland, and we have Fraser Knight, an LBC reporter, outside the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Glasgow. Fraser, good evening. Is this a suspected outbreak of coronavirus, or has it been confirmed?
Well, good evening, Nigel. It is a suspected outbreak. No cases have been confirmed in the UK whatsoever as it stands just now. And this story's been developing all day. It's now been confirmed that 5 people are being tested for suspected coronavirus in Scotland, with at least one of them believed to be here at Glasgow's Queen Elizabeth and others at a hospital in Edinburgh. Now, some of those who are being tested are thought to be Chinese nationals having travelled to the UK from Wuhan City in the past 2 weeks via London before reporting problems with their breathing, which is a red flag sign for the virus. Now, as you know, at least 17 have been killed by the coronavirus in China, with 20 million now in quarantine. And people travelling to the UK are being monitored. Downing Street says, as I said there are no known cases of the virus in the UK as it stands, and the 5 being tested here are only there as a precautionary measure. But the Health Secretary and Scotland's First Minister have told us the NHS is ready and able to cope if any cases are confirmed.
Do we know, Fraser, when we're going to get confirmation of whether it is or is not the virus?
We don't know when we'll get confirmation. I believe there is only one toxicology centre in the UK which is dealing with these tests. So these tests have been taken from the hospitals in Scotland and sent down to England to be tested. So we'll need to wait until those come back before we know.
Fraser, thank you very much indeed. Well, this has been brewing, of course, for a couple of weeks. The epicentre is Wuhan, Chinese city on the Yangtze, population of about 11 million people. I'm just wondering what the Chinese are doing about this and what we've been doing about this. Has our security perhaps been lax? I don't know. I'm going to ask Ben Kentish, LBC's Westminster correspondent. Ben, you've been down at Heathrow today.
I have been down at Heathrow this afternoon, Nigel, where there is real concern. There's people flying back to China, lots of people wearing masks, obviously hearing these reports that coronavirus that's done so much damage, so many cases in China, and it is a May, the government's saying there's very much precaution and these tests are unconfirmed, have reached the UK. Now, there's a sense perhaps that the Chinese government may have been a step ahead on this, because yesterday the British government said that the flights, the 3-a-week flights from Wuhan to London would be met by public health officials, and passengers coming off those flights would be checked. Now, the Chinese government hours later shut Wuhan. It is in lockdown. The airport is closed.
Yeah, there's a total of 20 million people in the area are sort of quarantined.
So as the British government said, we'll start checking people as they come off the flights. The Chinese government said, well, actually, there won't be any flights because Wuhan airport is being closed. Now, of course, this virus has an incubation time of about 2 weeks, so it might take that long for symptoms to show. So the concern is the flights that have already been entering the UK from Wuhan and other Chinese airports, those passengers dispersing are obviously around the UK and around the rest of the world.
But is it true, as some press reported today, that flights coming in from China yesterday to Heathrow, rather than having health checks, people were being given a leaflet?
Yes, and there's some of the passengers themselves were slightly confused, shall we say, because they got off the plane and they were handed a leaflet, and I saw one of those leaflets and it simply said, there's an outbreak in Wuhan, if you have these symptoms, please go to the doctor. And the symptoms were a temperature and a cough and breathing difficulties. So obviously those are also symptoms of a common cold. So some passengers were expecting a little bit more, but as I say, those flights stopped completely.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
those tests are redundant.
I know that every time this happens, whether it's SARS or whatever it is, we all get very, very worried, and the number confirmed dead is now gone up to 18. We all get very concerned, and there is fear of a pandemic, which mercifully doesn't happen very often. But if it did, we're told this is a particularly dangerous virus, that it's pretty much untreatable medically, and some people have even drawn comparisons with the Spanish flu epidemic, which of course gripped Europe from 1918 to 1920. And we're not trying to scaremonger anyone here right now on this show, I promise you. But I have to say, doesn't it seem incredibly lax of us to have been allowing planes to come in from China yesterday and just to give people a leaflet? Is there anything more the British government say they're going to do on this?
They are very much playing down the fears that people have expressed. They're saying all the measures are in place. They are stressing that there are no confirmed cases in the UK yet, and saying they are monitoring the situation. Now, I asked Number 10 if there were any plans for Boris Johnson or any other of his ministers to convene an emergency COBRA meeting to assess the UK's response. The response was, no, they're monitoring the situation, but at this time there's no plans. They are saying everything that needs to be done is being done, and that there's no need to panic.
Thank you very much. That was Ben Kentish, who's been down at Heathrow today, and I'm just astonished that all people got yesterday was a leaflet, when you see other parts of the world when they were actually having their temperatures tested and all the rest of it. Ben, thank you for that. Back to our debate on crime, and what's been interesting so far with your messages, your texts, your tweets, your phone calls, is there seems to be commonality at this moment in time that we've all gone a bit soft. We need to get tougher. I really do wonder, is this yet another issue where the way Westminster thinks and our judiciary thinks and the way London thinks is very different to the way the rest of the country thinks? I suspect that it probably is. See, Jason on YouTube says, make prison a scary place. Breeding heart approach doesn't work. Yeah, but Jason, if you make prison scary, do you perhaps risk lowering yourself morally to the level of those that have committed crime? I raise that as a very serious point. Let's go to Pat, who's a new caller to the show from Swansea. Pat, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. Good evening to you.
So, what's the one thing you'd do, Pat, to try and stop this rise of crime?
I think the first thing I would do would be to go to the public and say to the public, what do you want from your policing? I'm a retired police officer, having retired 3 years ago. And I think what we've seen now is that policing has become even more complex, more complicated, dealing with issues such as hate crime, computer crime. And basically, I think resources and resourcing haven't kept up with the demand. I currently have a daughter who's a serving officer, and she tells me that all her inspector is concerned about is, are we dealing with child sexual exploitation, mental health, and vulnerable and missing people. So therefore, the question has to be asked of the public: what do you want your policing to do?
Well, Pat, I'm sure if we had a mini referendum on this, I'm sure that policing the streets, not the tweets, would overwhelmingly win. And if people say horrible, offensive things about you online, it's not very nice, but is it really right that 1,000 people in the Metropolitan Police spend their time looking for hate crime?
I think the issue is that obviously clearly it's what potential hate crime can potentially lead to if it's not addressed. But certainly, when we look at things like Twitter, Facebook, and Skype, and these sorts of computer issues, why is it suddenly bounced back to the police? Why don't these organisations suspend the use for people committing crime? It just seems to be that the police tend to be the last bastion, the last agency that never says no. And clearly, what's needed now more than ever is for policing to say, "I'm sorry. As from here on in, we will not deal with social services issues. We will not deal with mental health related issues. We will return and deal with crime, which is firmly what I believe the public wants us to be dealing with."
Pat, I'm following, the logic of what you're saying. Who does deal with mental health issues then?
Well, the problem being is that when there's no mental health crisis teams working a weekend and a person is suffering a crisis, it's left to the police to deal with. We are not trained as mental health professionals. It cannot be right that is left for the police to deal with. Earlier on, you spoke about Mayor Rudolph Giuliani and what he did with policing in America. One of the first things he did was there was a massive uplift of police officers, and most of those police officers were put out frontline on the streets to act as a visible deterrent. Once you've got that visible deterrent out there, crime will start to fall. But when you have police officers working in offices, hiding behind desks, watch crime continue to rise.
I think now on that point, Pat, I'll say thank you. Too much bureaucracy, too much form filling, and perhaps the wrong priorities. Now, I have mentioned drugs a couple of times so far in this, and it is a very, very important part of this whole crime argument. Simon from Wolverhampton says, the war on drugs is a failure and at the heart of the problem. We need to decriminalise possession, stop all jail sentences for non-violent, low-level crimes, and introduce a 3-strike-for-life policy for violent crime. On the drugs, Simon, I have to say this is one of those issues that I've toyed with for years. Whenever I hear a government minister or a police officer saying, we're launching the war on drugs, I just laugh. Because every single one of those wars has lost and has been a failure. Tell you what I'd like to see, Simon, and I mean this. I would like to see a royal commission that investigates countries in which drugs have been decriminalised or legalised. I'm thinking about Portugal, particularly, Switzerland. I want to know 10 or 15 years on, what's happened to crime? How many more people are taking these drugs? What's happened to their health? I'd really like to know whether legalising or decriminalising makes things better or worse. And I think if ever there was a need for a royal commission to genuinely look at something and study it over a period of months, I think attitudes toward drugs and how we deal with them would be an absolute prime contender. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show. It is 6:46 and time for the news headlines with Thomas Watts.
The World Health Organization has said it's too early to declare an international public health emergency over the coronavirus outbreak. A van driver has been found guilty of attacking a police officer with a machete in East London. Workers on South Western Railway have voted to continue taking industrial action in the long-running dispute over guards on trains. A cloudy night across England and Wales with clearer skies in Scotland, a low of 4 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. On the M25 anti-clockwise, they're accused for around an hour, going from junction 9 for Leatherhead to junction 6 for Godstone after an accident earlier and because of the roadworks there. Anti-clockwise on the M25, it's also very slow to the Dartford Tunnel from junction 3 for the M20. 2 lanes stay closed because the lorry's broken down. They're accused in Harrow. The A404 Watford Road is closed both ways because of water mains burst near Harrow Hill Golf Course. In Stockwell Road is now closed in both directions near the tube station because of an accident, so there are queues. On the trains, London Overground have no service between Barking and Gospel Oak. There are also severe delays on London Overground from Stratford to Richmond and Clapham Junction. And on the tube, there's no service on the District Line between Earls Court and Edgware Road.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
We've got two potentially rather emotional phone-ins for you tonight on child bereavement and workplace bullying. But first, it's the LBC News Hour.
Ian Dale on LBC.
You know what it's like when you can't find your debit card? Panic. That's what it's like. Until you realise, as a Halifax Visa debit card holder, that you can freeze your card on the spot. Control your Halifax Visa debit card with the Halifax mobile app. Easy as.
You can only freeze certain transaction types. Terms and conditions apply.
Here you are, it's January again.
Nuh-uh, this is 2020, the year of the boss. The year you leave your same old job and boss the business of your #dreams. And with a 3 business plan, you get exclusive benefits from FreshBooks, Moo, WeWork, and Wix. Plus, you can get unlimited data, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost. So you can ride the wave of new biz like an absolute pro.
Get a plan fit for a boss, because 3 means business, just like you. Compatible device required. See 3.co.uk/5G.
Ever dreamt of running your own business? It may be easier to achieve than you think. With a franchise, you start with a proven business model and the support of an established brand. Visit the British and International Franchise Exhibition on the 31st of January and the 1st of February at Olympia, London. Meet a wide range of franchise brands, benefit from expert advice, and take the next step towards being your own boss. Get your free tickets today at franchisetickets.co.uk.
Don't miss the month-end sale only at Oak Furnitureland, because it's always 100% solid hardwood. But right now, with huge savings. It's unmissable. The month-end sale at Oak Furnitureland is online and in-store now, but must end Sunday.
Many people find their memory changes as they age. For most, it's a natural part of aging. For some, however, it could be an indication of something more serious. For some, it could be Alzheimer's disease. St Pancras Clinical Research is conducting a trial of an investigational drug for early-stage Alzheimer's. If you are between the ages of 50 and 90, have a study partner and would like more information, please contact St Pancras Clinical Research at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's St Pancras Clinical Research at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com to hear more about this study.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 6-pack of Mr. Kipling Angel Slices, now half price, from £1.80 to just 90p. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
Oh my days, it's storming the charts at 169.
And last over the line, number 169. You're 169 in line to the throne.
The number 169 never screamed going places until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go, Aygo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Aygo X-Play over 48 months. £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of March 2020. £3,311.25p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
We're talking crime, what needs to be done to reduce it. And I have to say, I think something along the lines of zero tolerance and taking back the streets is about the most important thing we could do. Before that, a very significant and sombre anniversary this week. It is the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, the concentration and extermination camp in Poland. And of course, it was the Red Army that did it. And before the Red Army got there, what was done by the German commander of the tank is they actually destroyed and blew up as much of the evidence as they possibly could. But, I mean, people were left in no doubt afterwards that vast numbers of people were killed and destroyed in that place. And today in Jerusalem, there's been, quite rightly, a big memorial event attended by, prominent figures from each country. In our case, it was Prince Charles. And Charles spoke, and spoke quite movingly, but afterwards there's a bit of controversy here, because Prince Charles goes down the line shaking hands. He shakes hands with Netanyahu, he shakes hands and chats with Emmanuel Macron and other world leaders. Mike Pence, the Vice President of the USA, he just walked straight past him. Now, judge for yourself. Did Prince Charles snub Mike Pence? And you can do that. If you're on Twitter, go to @LBC. If not, go to lbc.co.uk. @LBC or lbc.co.uk. Watch Prince Charles. At the end of that commemorative ceremony, do you think he snubbed the American Vice President? I'm asking you. I've made my mind up on this, but have a look. Tell me what you think. OK, let's get back to this issue of crime. Jake is a new caller to the station from Woolwich. Jake, good evening.
Hello there, Nigel.
What's the one thing you do, Jake?
The one thing that I do?
What one thing that you would do to help bring crime down?
Legalise marijuana. It would take a lot of pressure off of the police. The revenue that you could make from it could support new police officers in the first place.
Right.
So that does a lot for us.
But if we legalise marijuana, surely the next thing is you'd be asking me to legalise cocaine.
But the difference is with cocaine and the correct term, history behind it as such. Where cocaine comes from, there's a lot of other bits and bobs that are involved in its making, where it comes from, and what it funds as well. Where marijuana can be grown here in the UK, and it can be, the revenue can be used to support the money that we need for different things.
Jake, there are big states in America, of course, that have and are still debating, and you know, marijuana is being legalised in quite a lot of America. It's now a giant multi-billion-pound industry, and it is paying taxes. The one slight problem with legalising cannabis is that just when you do that, Jake, a lot more people use it.
Agreed. Yeah, it will be one of those cases. But the problem is, as you said earlier, there are so many people using it now.
I know.
Why are we not taking the opportunity of gaining the money from it, where all we're basically doing is providing someone else with a better lifestyle because they've got something that most people want?
Jake, you've put the case for legalisation with some passion. Thank you. And, do you know, 10, 15 years ago, you might have shouted that argument down. But given that lots of America is doing it, you know, it is a serious debate. I want to see a Royal Commission on this. And lots of you talking about drugs. But the one thing that really fascinates me about these crime figures today is the number of unreported crimes. Nigel, my garage was broken into a couple of years ago. I had 5 phone calls from the police. They all repeated the same question. I asked them, please don't call again. They didn't visit. No action was taken. Last week, it happened again. My car was in the garage and was broken into. Needless to say, I didn't bother to report the incident. Richard in Cheltenham, I completely understand that. As I said, I had one small crime committed against me last year. I just didn't bother to report it. I couldn't see the point of it. And Sophie from Cambridge feels very upset. She says, I'm an undergraduate at the University of Cambridge studying criminology and recently got rejected from the police without even getting an interview. I don't understand that one, Sophie. Let's go to Ross, who's a new caller to LBC from Ivor Heath in Buckinghamshire. Ross, good evening.
Oh, thank you very much for taking my call. Yeah, thanks for Brexit as well. But yeah, I normally check Peter Hitchens' website.
Yes.
And what he says is that the police is a supply and demand force. So a crime happens and they respond to it. What they need to do is they need to prevent crime. So more active patrols, things like that, which will stop crime happening rather than just turning up when the crime has happened.
Yes,
it's trying to solve it.
It's the symptoms and causes.
What I mean, yeah.
No, I get it completely. But Ross, it's very interesting that you mentioned the name Peter Hitchens because, you know, he's got his regular column in the Mail on Sunday. Now, when it comes to drugs, when it comes, to marijuana, whatever, Hitchens' attitude is that we should just be absolutely tough. Everyone that takes drugs or supplies drugs should go to prison. Do you support his view on that?
I think we do need to. We do need to act tough on crime and set a precedent
and drugs
of what's happening.
And drugs, Ross.
And drugs as well, definitely.
Yeah.
If we just don't act and just kind of let it happen, I think it's just going to get worse. So if we if we actually try and tackle these things and show that we're convicting people, I think it'll get done.
OK, Ross, thank you. And Ross, you know, Peter Hitchens, very much a hardliner on law and order and on drugs. And the more you debate crime, the more you debate street crime, the more you keep coming back, I think, to drugs. I've got time quickly for one last caller. James in Thurrock. Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, I've got me fireworks ready for the 31st, Nigel, so I'm ready to rock and roll.
Good man. Now, I'm afraid to say that Westminster Council have banned me from letting off fireworks in Parliament Square, but never mind. James, you've got 50 seconds to tell us what you do.
Basically, get the chain gangs going like they do in America, where they're visible, they're out in the public, they're not in a cell, stuck in a cell, smoking spice, sitting around all day doing nothing. They're out. They're either cleaning up litter, they're doing community service, basically, but all linked in chain links, walking along the streets in their outfits. So everyone, all the young kids can see them. All the young kids on the street can see their friend who stabbed someone. They can see him walking along in a chain gang. They think, God, I ain't having none of that, mate.
Do you know what, James? Can you imagine our Parliament, the liberal elite in this country, sanctioning chain gangs? It isn't going to happen, James, is it?
Well, that's what's wrong with this country. Too much cultural Marxism, too much lefty, liberal, just so soft. Like, we're getting what we deserve with these people.
James, I tell you what, I don't agree with chain gangs, but I do agree we have gone soft in the head when it comes to these things. Thank you very much indeed. And Ian sends me a message. I've just watched lbc.co.uk. I saw His Royal Highness Prince Charles. I was absolutely disgusted. I haven't given an opinion on this, but do have a look. Twitter at LBC, lbc.co.uk. Watch Prince Charles walking past Mike Pence, the Vice President of America, and not shaking his hand. Make your own minds up. I'll ask you for the answers on Sunday when I'm back at 10 a.m. At 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick. Now, it's Ian Dale.
Nigel, thank you very much. At 8 o'clock, we're going to have a very emotional phone-in, I suspect. Parents who suffer the loss of a child under the age of 18 will be entitled to 2 weeks statutory paid leave from April, it was announced today. I don't think anybody who hasn't suffered the loss of a child can understand the emotional trauma and grief experienced by the child's parents. So this is obviously a welcome move, but I want to know, does it go far enough? If you've been in this situation, how have you coped? Especially if your employer is demanding that you go back to work immediately. And believe me, that often happens. And you think, well, how crass is that when somebody's undergone such a grievous loss that they're asked to go back to work the next day? What kind of employer would do that? That's coming up at 8.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, the World Health Organization has said it's too early to declare an international public health emergency over the coronavirus outbreak. 18 people in China have died from the illness.